That was Omen by Disclosure and Sam Smith. Now we have a guest joining us on Rise and Shine as promised. Welcome Heba Rahhal, who is Jordan's My Diabetes Story ambassador, also very involved in creating diabetes awareness. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Oh, 1 second. Good morning to you.
Hold on, everybody. Just yesterday I got flack for forgetting to turn on a guest microphone, so I'm just going to go ahead and say good morning, Heba.
He has to rub it in.
Lovely to hear your voice this morning.
Good morning.
Heba, you are also very active as an athlete. You've had an extensive background in all sorts of different sports, all the way back in school, even volleyball, athletics, even in your university years. You have a BA in physical education.
True.
You've gone on to become the learning facilitator in the National Coaching Certification Program, where you were nominated for a scholarship to study your Executive Masters in Sports Organization Management, which is really impressive. But Heba, you were also diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Yes, 16 years ago now.
16 years ago. Can you tell us about how you first found out that you had type 1 diabetes?
Well, as you said, I've been active since my childhood, playing all sorts of sports and participating with the national team. So if you can imagine it, I've been working out at least 2 or 3 hours a day. And then 2 years prior to my diagnosis, I had been working out for about 6 hours a day. And then after the Pan Am Games, winning the bronze team medal, I suddenly started losing weight, and we thought it was just after the effect of the participation in competition. And then I went and ran some tests, and discovered that my blood sugar levels were high. And it was a shock to everyone because I was an athlete, I had no diabetes in my family, and it was surprising that I could not be diabetic.
So how is that? Because that's a thing. I always thought that type 1 specifically was a hereditary type of diabetes.
It's type 2. That's the other point. Type 2 is hereditary. Type 1, it's usually it happens with it's an early onset with kids. Usually children at the age of 2, 3, or 13 get type 1 diabetes. In my case, I was 22. I had just finished my university. That's why it was a bit surprising because usually kids get diabetes, and type 1, it's when your white blood cells attack your insulin producing cells and your pancreas stops producing insulin, and you have to take it manually. Whereas type 2, as everybody knows, it's hereditary. It's controlled by how you're living and how healthy you are.
Absolutely. That's a very important distinction, the difference between type 1 and type 2, because at the moment there is no cure for diabetes in general.
In diabetes in general, but for type 1, when you get type 1 diabetes, that's it. You're on insulin. It's how you manage your life. But in type 2, if you prevent it, if you realize that you may get type 2, you can actually have and lead a healthy lifestyle, and that will prevent you from getting type 2. Or even when you're early diagnosed, you can still work out and lead a healthy life, and everything will be okay. So that's another distinction between both of them, which is important.
But I mean, since being diagnosed, has it affected you? Because you're very athletic, like we mentioned. How have you managed to balance your athletic lifestyle while having type 1 diabetes?
Well, my first point to my doctor was, I have 3 conditions. I want to continue playing with the national team. I want to eat whatever I want, and I don't want to take an injection.
Exactly. Conditions for your doctor,
because we don't know what's possible and what's not. Is this doable?
And he told me yes, you can. Okay. And he arranged my medication according to my lifestyle, and he told me go ahead and work out as much as you want. And I continued my participation with the national team for like a few years after that. And I led a well-controlled diet where I tested, so it was doable. And that's where my inspiration was to start spreading awareness on type 1.
Initially, when you did find out, it must have been a little bit difficult to handle. Who did you go through for help? Did you find the support you needed at the time, or was it difficult to find communities that were willing to talk about it?
When back then it was probably difficult. I decided to communicate and talk about it to everyone. I actually took my kit and showed everybody before my workout what I had to do. But no, it was a challenge. And the first time I started talking about diabetes, that was in 2001. Everyone was calling me up and saying, why why are you going public about your diabetes, and why are you sharing your story with everyone? But now it's much better. There are different places where people are communicated. We've started the My Diabetes Story community, where it's a platform for patients living with diabetes and their friends and families to communicate and share their stories. It's a closed community, which allows patients to communicate and freely, because a lot of patients still don't want to share their stories about diabetes. They don't want to talk about it. And I think the best cure and the best support is for you to actually start sharing your story.
Yeah.
And things much.
I mean, you know, the thing is, we find this a lot. People are very reserved when it comes to things that really they have very little control over. And it's seeing that so many people are affected by this. I don't understand the shyness of it, the lack of the willingness to go out there and talk about it, because Bilaks, yani, this is something that we do need to start talking about, and it's going to start affecting so many different people. We haven't even touched upon what we can start doing to help prevent this. We will get to that in a bit. But from what I've seen, and with my very limited knowledge, it looks like we need to begin a discussion, because it can be, in a lot of cases, sort of at least prevented, if not, you know, measurable and handleable, basically. So I have posted this website for us right now. You can check it out. We will post it on all of our social media outlets. We're going to take just a little bit of a break, listen to some music, and then come back in just a moment. Right now, we got Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on Rise and Shine.
We're back from Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, and we are still speaking to Heba Rahhal, who is Jordan's My Diabetes Story ambassador. She's very active in creating awareness about diabetes. We're talking about someone here who's diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. She's very athletic, and in fact, she's been selected to play on the national fencing team, has received a number of medals, and gone on to do a lot more in the world of sports. Heba, we spoke a little bit about how when you were diagnosed and the difference between type 1 and type 2, and also the My Diabetes Story community that can help others out there. Let's talk a little bit about awareness. Is there enough awareness about type 1 diabetes across Jordan, and diabetes in general, really?
I don't think there's enough awareness. I mean, a lot of people are talking and communicating about diabetes, but when it comes to awareness and education, there's a lot to be done. When it comes to kids in school and diabetes, they struggle because a lot of people think that kids cannot be active. Type 1 diabetics are struggling because teachers don't understand their needs, like they need to run to the toilet or they have to eat even if they're in the middle of the class. And it takes a lot of effort. We focus on educating patients themselves, because as we said, when they communicate about living with diabetes, it makes their life better, because wherever they go, everybody knows, and when everybody knows, they know how to help them. And when people are talking about it, it doesn't it stops from being that taboo topic, and it starts turning into that normal thing in our everyday life. But then again, we need to educate the community and the parents and everybody else. We need a lot.
It's that community aspect as well, because, you know, just talking a second off the mic, we were saying how some kids' lives are being affected because the community around them doesn't know how to deal with their condition. That's definitely one of the things that, especially with children, because you don't want them to miss out on their lives.
And it's not for type 1s only, because we have children now with an early onset of type 2. So you have children type 2, children type 1. And then when we talk about the grown-ups who have type 2, awareness is still important for them, because they think that's it, we can manage, it doesn't matter. But no, it does matter, and there's a lot to learn, and you can be in control of your life. You can prevent it, or if you already have type 2 diabetes, you can normally live with it and be active. Nothing will stop you. There are no limitations.
As far as positivity is concerned, you know, it must be difficult for somebody to hear the news. But how have you used this opportunity to show people that you can address it positively, and you can have a message, and you can have a great life, Annie, at the same time?
Well, when I first got diabetes, I decided, well, with my doctor helping me and telling me I can do whatever I want, I decided to take control and live as I wanted. And I could. And realizing that I was able to do that, that's how I communicated with children in camps. and in with the community in general, telling people that there are no limitations. Diabetes, it's just like any other challenge, and it's how you decide to face it is what matters. So if I'm standing there and I have diabetes and I want to live with that burden and be grumpy about it, I'm gonna still live my life with diabetes, but with that burden. But if you decide to accept it, so acceptance is key, and realize that you can do well and you can live as you please, then you're living positively, you don't have that burden, and then you take control of your life.
And just quickly before we wrap this up, what symptoms should people look out for? What warning signs can we see in ourselves so that we can go and get checked? And also, how often should somebody go get checked?
This is a brilliant question. For type 1s, usually you end up seeing it because you lose a lot of weight, you drink a lot of water, it's going to the bathroom back and forth like a zillion times. But for type 2, it's silent. So you may be living with diabetes and not knowing it because it doesn't show until you actually check. So the key is to test at least once a year the HbA1c. I believe it's one of the best tests, and frequently test from day to day if you doubt that you may have diabetes.
Well, that's the thing. I've known of some relatively healthy people finding out that they have diabetes, thinking, I'm healthy. I eat the right things. I work out, and even with these things, sometimes people might still be at risk. So, I mean, we would recommend all of the people out there, if you do have a chance. I think people are afraid sometimes.
That's true, and that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You should test and know, because if you know if you really know at an early stage, you can prevent it. So denial is keeping you from staying healthy. So go out there, test, make sure that you're okay, and it's manageable. So it's not the end of the world if you get diabetes, but it's how you deal with it and how do you decide to live is what matters.
Thank you so much, Heba, for joining us today. This has been enlightening, to say the least, and I really hope that anybody listening out there has taken this advice to heart, because it is important. This is your health, and nothing is more important in this world. And I hope that you can come back in the future and speak to us a little bit more, so we continue to remind our listeners about such an important condition.
Thank you. I'm always ready to do that. Thanks.
All right, Heba, thank you so much. We're going to move things along with Hang On from 2009. It is Plum right here on Rise and Shine.